Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. The last time you saw this, it was driving around. We were doing a little review on it, and now we got this thing torn into pretty well. We're going into the engine to delete some parts, and we're about to take the fuel rails off, and then the turbo is going to be the next thing that's going to be coming off. So we're working on that right now. Okay guys, so we finally got the turbo off. We did have some trouble getting it out.
Some of the issues we had with getting the turbo out, because the turbo has to come out first before anything else does come out. Some of the nuts on the back of the exhaust elbow on the turbo, high heat stress. Thankfully, these did well. The studs are still in. We were able to get the damaged nuts off. Must use 6-point fasteners for that. Specific to this application on the Jeep Grand Cherokee 05 to 2010, however 2007, 2008 are the years that are applicable for the OM642. Okay, the primary cat first has to come out first prior to getting the turbo and the Y pipe out, because the Y pipe on the driver's side will not come out with the primary cat installed. It's 2 band clamps, pretty easy, comes out. Then you have everything done, and you can pull the turbocharger out all in one unit with the Y pipe. And then after that, next step would be also the pedestal in which the turbo mounts in the base of the valley of the engine. However, like I said, you might want to make sure you put, an example, penetrant oil, maybe Kroll, maybe PB Blaster, really good stuff, on your high heat temperature areas for your nuts and your fasteners. That's about it, but like I said, without getting this out first, then the turbo, then you can work on the manifolds and the plumbing. You get those out, you're home free. And while you're there, you also want to look at areas in your turbo. You want to look at play on the intake side on that. Check your run out. Got no forward and aft run out, so I've got no axial play. You're going to have a little bit of radial, which is your up and down movement. That's okay. Not excessive, not bad, no wear. The blades look good. The turbine looks good. The compressor wheel looks good. General overall condition, not bad for 117,000 miles in about 10 to 11 years. Okay, in this segment we've got the passenger side. Make that the passenger side intake manifold off, and we're going to remove the swirl valves. Swirl valves basically your the shaft is comprised rather of the bottom up through. On this one here, basically you have a shaft that's put up through the bottom, held in with a keeper. The way Mercedes-Benz did it was that they put the shaft in, held it there, put it in a fixture, put the clip in. They had the vane, or the valves rather, put in, or the flaps, and then they believe, looks like TIG welded them in. This one's a little crusty, you can't see that. So in order to remove these, first thing to do is what we're going to do now. Could be a better way of doing this. Up for any comments or quotes. You can either A, take the valve, hold it open, take another vice grip, grab the vane, or the valve rather, and wiggle it and loosen the welds. There's typically one weld here, one weld there. So there's one here and one there. So there's two on top, two on bottom on the shaft. So the way they did it is they stamped out the circular valve itself, or the flap rather, and then they put it in a fixture, like I said, held together and put it all together, and then they TIG it. I believe they TIG weld. It looks like TIG welds. So for removal, what you want to do, because you're going to use this to remove your failure prone swirl valve system. By the way, if you do this, you have to have a tune done to tune this out correctly, because if you do not, you're going to incur messages and limp mode. So there's only one way to do it the right way. If not, don't do it. Okay, so we're going to knock out the welds here on the shaft, and then after that we'll go down, pull the locking clip, and then the shaft will come right out. Now, like I said, there's two ways of doing it. You can do it with vice grips on the swirl valve flap and do it that way, or you can just knock the welds loose. Either way, it's going to be a little bit ugly whenever it goes all the way into the intake, but that's okay. You just pour it right out the end. No big deal. Okay, there we go. That one was a little bit rough, but we got it. So now we're free to turn all the way around 360, or as much as possible depending on the location where you're working at. Next thing you want to do is anything. You probably could use pliers. I'm going to use this here. It's a pry bar, a little crude, a little powerful, but that's okay. Biggest thing you want to remember also, being aluminum surface, you do not want to scar, gouge, scratch, or mar your mating surface for your gasket, because this is aluminum. So if you're going to use any tools, I highly recommend put something over it. That way you do not damage your mating surface, because if you do that, you're going to have bigger problems. Now, what just happened was not really a bad thing. What happens is these things end up getting brittle over time. So these tabs usually pull out. Let me just try this one over here. Nope, that's typical. Okay, let's go for the third one, see what happens. Oh, look, we have a winner. Look at that. Anyway, this is the way it's supposed to work. So these locking tabs come out. Supposedly, just like that. However, in our situation up here, it did not happen. You could probably get a drill, like maybe with a number 40 size or a 50 size drill bit, and go into it that way. However, because they are so brittle, you can kind of just chip at it just a little bit, So you can do it this way, just to chip away at it to remove the material. Just like that. So biggest thing is you do not want to mar your casting or gouge your casting or damage your casting, because here at a later date we're going to have these all welded up once we remove these, but they have to be pristine, crystal clean first before we go to the welder. Okay, so now that we've chipped away the old keeper or retainer due to heat, you know, because they just don't do well. Next step is just go ahead and remove the shaft. By the way, this is the swirl valve flap right there. You can see how it had welds on one side. It's stamped one side and they joggle for the shaft in the middle, so that way you can, as I said earlier, knock it through at the welds. Okay, so now what we're going to do is remove the shaft. Our keeper is removed, chipped away, gone. So now we're just going to take a little brake tool, ease it out just a little bit. You can also take some vice grips. There we go. Should come right out. Okay, if we look, I'm having a little trouble bringing this one out. So we have remnants of a keeper still in there, some of the plastic that was brittle. So sometimes you have to work that out. Okay, still got just a little bit left in there. There we go. If you look and see, we've got all of the keeper out. Okay, so that's going to allow us to bring our shaft down like that. Okay, so if you look, there's our shaft minus our keeper and our swirl valve flap. So she basically goes like that. Remove that, take the keeper out, should slide down. That more or less is what it's going to look like. You're going to have two areas that you're going to want to have welded up once the whole thing's clean. That'll be this area here and this area here. That way you're welded up from the exterior. You have no swirl flap valve installation. It'll be clean. We're going to clean the whole thing. By the way, these intake pieces are kind of hard to find, and they're very, very, very expensive, so you do not want to drop them, crack them. You want to be very careful with them. But so far, not a bad job. Just take your time, go easy, be safe, and that's just